Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to my show, High Road to Humanity. In every episode, I tell you powerful true stories filled with great wisdom that you can use in your own life as you strive for a higher road to travel. My featured guests will have their own unique stories to tell that enlighten your mind and your soul. So kick back, relax, and learn the secret to success when you take the high road.
First touch, strong connection, it lays deep in your soul.
Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And I'm here today with David Richman, and he's written this fabulous book. It's called Cycle of Life, or Lives. I'll take that back because there's more than one in this book. So, David, welcome to High Road to Humanity.
Thank you. I'm very excited to talk to you, Nancy.
I'm excited you're here. Okay, you guys. So if you want to know what we're going to be talking about today, Cycle of Lives was created as the result of many years of dedication to raising awareness and funds for cancer research and care. Okay, this is a really serious subject we're going to talk about today. David first started to form this idea in 2007 after his sister was in the last few weeks of her battle with brain cancer. So he made a commitment to his sister before her passing that he would run 24 hours and raise money to support the fight of others. So for the past 15 years, David has completed so many events, 87-mile run. He's gone from Cancun to Tulum in the heat of a Mexican summer. He's done a 104-mile run along the Pacific Coast Highway, long bike rides. I'm a bike rider. I like riding the bike, so we'll talk about that today. But he's had hundreds of people who've supported him, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And then he put this book together, and I want you to tell the story. You know, David, I know it's probably difficult, but tell us a story about June. That was my mom's name, by the way. And
Sweet.
yeah, and was it just you and her, or did you just two siblings, or were there more siblings? Or
No, just the two of us. We were only about 16 months apart. So I tend to say like her and I were very close in age, right? 16 months apart. My parents, though, on the other hand, were 38 years in difference. So 21 and 59 when I was born. So yeah, I know that's ridiculous. So her and I had each other, but we didn't have really much of either parent, right? Because one was way too young to have kids, one was way too old to have kids. So her and I were very close growing up.
wow, that's so. Tell me the story. What happened? She was always very healthy, and tell
Yeah.
what happened. Tell us a story.
Well, so um, I think that what made her experience with cancer a little more stark was that coming from a traumatic childhood that we both had, uh, in my mid 30s, I was a wreck. And in her mid 30s, she was fantastic, great circle of friends, healthy marriage, two kids, and really living her best life. Coming out of that, I really admired that. Um, and one day I was right kind of in the middle of doing a super huge pivot in my life, like finally getting some awareness about who I wanted to be and all the mistakes I had made and all the wrong paths I'd gone down and maybe just the wrong frame of mind that I had. And I wanted to make this major change in my life. And when I did, I saw this huge pathway in front of me of where I might become by living on purpose and by having a purposeful life and connecting in the right way with the world around me. And meanwhile, at the exact same time, here's a woman who's on that path and very, solidly on that path. And then she called me up and she's like, yeah, I got diagnosed with terminal brain cancer.
I mean, brain cancer.
Ugh.
Awful. And did it run? It was not, hereditary or anything.
No, not hereditary, nothing. I mean, there's just,
It was just something that happened.
I write in the book about the fact that it's like the queen of emotional chaos because there's a little bit of voodoo going on with cancer, right? Who doesn't know the 90-year-old woman that smokes cigars and drinks whiskey and is healthy, and the 35-year-old woman who's out there running marathons, never smoked a day in her life, and all of a sudden gets lung cancer. I mean, a lot of times it's just not understandable. And it makes it somewhat difficult for us to kind of wrap our brains around the emotional side of it. And
Mhm.
when I witnessed what June was going through, and I watched the doctors and patients and other people when I was doing events, I noticed that there was this kind of a very consistent dynamic, Nancy, and that was that people were really good about dealing with the tasks around their cancer. How do I eat better? How do I sleep better? How do I navigate healthcare? How do I get my kids watched while I go to chemo? How do I get support from friends? This kind of stuff they were good at. But
Right.
when it came to the emotional side,
I was just going to say the
very
emotional,
quiet.
yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt you on this, but as you're
Yeah.
talking, and as I went through your book, I'm an empath. I don't know if you know that, but I pick up the energy of other people. And I'm very empathic, and it was very difficult for me to even read this
Hmm.
because I have had so many people on the show, and I hope you understand what I'm saying and not take it negatively because it's not. It's just you're probably learning as you're doing these interviews too. All the people who seem to get some kind of illness, it's almost like there isn't in it, there's like an internalization, like the internalized in emotion. It's emotion because we're energy, we're made up of energy, and we're completely energy. And you were saying it yourself, you were in a bad spot, your energy wasn't good, you changed your energy, and life was good. And you thought her life was good, but maybe inside, there was some energy that was stuck or whatever. And we're just starting to realize this stuff.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
when you bring this up, it really hits home with me because nobody had, like you said, you've got all these doctors and nurses and they're doing the mechanical stuff.
Hmm.
But what about the emotions?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, listen, one of the people in the book, I don't know if you got this far, but one of the people in the book is an oncologist, and she, for 40 years had never discussed the emotional issues that she was experiencing, not with her husband, not with friends, not with peers, not with anyone, because we just don't know how to navigate. In fact, it's pretty funny. I asked her, I said to her, I go, well, so why go into oncology? I mean, like seriously, why become a surgeon and deal with breast cancer your whole life, whatever? And what's the point? And she goes, man, she goes like every other oncologist. We go into because we want good karma and hope we don't get cancer. I'm like, wow.
You know what? It's a lot of times they will get it because they take it on. Have you
Yeah.
heard that? And have you
Oh,
seen
sure.
it before? Yeah, it's the energetic exchange of
Mhm.
energy. Well,
Yeah, but what happens is what I witnessed was that when it came to that emotional side, this 24-hour run that you mentioned in the entrance,
mm,
um, this was an event that June wanted to go to watch a team that was assembled to raise money for her, and it's where you walk around a track for 24 hours, and she wanted to just root them on as they were, supporting her, and she passed away a couple of days before, right? But I still did the 24-hour event and I was on the track the whole 24 hours and I was just watching. And man, it was lively and it was energetic and people were sharing information and they were, crying and they were laughing and they were, doing all this awareness stuff. And I was really like, wow, this is amazing. But then later in the day, it was like the remembrance lapse and everybody all of a sudden just got super, super quiet and they could label the emotions up in candles on the stands and they could and they could be there and walk but nobody talked. Everybody was just isolated. They were just in their own little internal worlds dealing with the emotion, and I'm like, why is it so easy to talk about like the task and not the emotion? Why is that? And I think part of it is because it's just so much of an unknown.
well, it's our society. We've all been, taught to suppress our emotions and not to
Hmm.
show, even when growing up, I'm going to age myself, little boys were taught to toughen up and don't cry. And I've even been told when I was younger to toughen up
Sure.
and not be, but that's not the case. We need to release those emotions because what we're
Mhm.
doing is we're releasing that energy is what I have learned over time. What do you think?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and look, I believe that humans are only connected by two things. We're connected by emotion. We all have the same basic emotions. We might not have the same emotional responses, but we all have the same basic emotions, unless,
The
you know,
heart. We all got the heart.
Yeah, we all have a heart, but I mean, everybody experiences fear and anger and those kind of things, happiness, joy. And we're connected by story. And if we don't allow ourselves to explore those connections through storytelling and emotions, then we're just shut off from human beings. We don't connect with them on an authentic and deep level.
Right. We have to connect energetically. I agree with you. And that's why I do this show. So people like you can come on and tell their stories. You guys, I'm here today with David Richman. We're doing the podcast too, so we're going to pause. The book is Cycle of Lives. There are 15 people's stories in here, and hopefully he'll tell us a couple today. This is Nancy Earl. This is High Road to Humanity, and we will be right back. Hi, this is Nancy Earl, and this is High Road to Humanity. I'm here today with David Richman. David, where are you today? Where are you joining me from?
I am in Las Vegas, Nevada.
God bless. Well, I'm in New Mexico, so we're not too far from each other today.
Oh, well, on my bike ride, I went through New Mexico. One of my favorite stories in the book is from New Mexico.
From Albuquerque. You want to tell that story?
Yeah, sure. So part of the reason that I went on the bike ride. So basically what I did is I interviewed 15 people for a couple of years. I
Right.
interviewed more, but only 15. We were able to get like to the heart of the matter.
Right.
And they had that like some level of, hey, I really don't know how to talk about the emotional side of things, right? Everybody. But then I thought, well, maybe I'm being a little myopic. And maybe that's just because I'm creating that reality because those are the people that I found. And I said, well, part of the book is going to be um, like making sure that that's a theme that is not just one that I'm trying to, I'm the hammer and I found the nail, but this is something I want to try to see if it's more universal. So I'm in New Mexico and I have a friend who's supporting me and he has a family there. And his father had gone through cancer several years before. And his sister, who was a nurse, had stage 3 breast cancer, double mastectomy, and became a lobbyist for patient rights. And they both pull me aside. They take me out for brunch, like big family takes me out for brunch. And they both pull me aside individually, going, oh, this is such a great idea. Nobody talks about their cancer, about the emotional side. And I mean, we need to do that. We need to open our hearts and connect with people. And it's such a great thing you're doing. And I thought, wow, okay, well, I guess I found the exception to the rule. So I get up as I'm leaving for the big brunch, and I get up and I thank them, and I say, hey, listen, not everybody is like you. And I look at the dad, and he looks at me kind of weird, and I go, well, about being able to be open about your emotional things. And he puts his hands in his laps, and he puts his head down, and I go, what? And he said, well, I think it's a good thing what you're doing, but I never really talked about it. I'm old school. I mean, I don't want to put my adult kids through thing. I got to deal with it. I don't want to upset my wife. I just deal with my emotions on my own. And I looked at the daughter and I go, well, look, knowing what your dad went through and then what you went through, the fact that you were able to talk to him and she puts her hands in her laps and her eyes down. And I go, what? You just both told me how important it was. And she goes, well, I didn't want to like have him worry about losing a daughter. And so we never really talked about the emotional side of things. And I never really experienced, like what he went through. And I didn't want to burden him. I didn't really know what to say. And I'm like, but you both told me how important it was to talk. And they go, well, it is. We just haven't done it. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So even this beautiful, close family who had very similar experiences and were so congratulatory of me for exploring this thing, they had not talked about it. And it was really sweet. About 2 weeks later, I'm still on the bike ride. I'm in Florida, and I get a call from my friend, and he said, "Hey, brother, I need to let you know that my dad and my sister and me, we just went out for dinner." I go, "Oh, did you have a good time?" He goes, "I didn't say a word. These two laughed and they cried and they shared their emotions and they talked about their experiences and their fears and their joy and their gratitude, and it was amazing." He goes, the first time they ever talked about it, he goes, it was amazing. And I'm like, wow, that's so cool. Every day I ran into stories like that.
Yeah, see the change. Now I'm going to ask you, are you a religious kind of guy?
I would say that I'm spiritual. I don't know that I don't follow any religion, but I certainly believe in a higher power and that there are things out there that are unexplainable, and you just got to give into it and realize that there's more to the world than we know.
Right, because as you speak and as you tell these stories, I realize that all these people who are in your book, this was all divinely guided, each one.
Yeah. Can I tell you a really crazy story?
Sure.
let me tell you a super crazy story about June. So, if anybody listening has written a book, you know that when you write a book and you edit and you rewrite and you re-edit and you rewrite, and then the editor edits and rewrites, and then the publisher edits it and rewrites it, and then they lay it out, and the copywriter comes along, and then layout artist and blah 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 blah. Right? You couldn't plan to put anything in a specific place except for maybe the title page, right? So my sister was super close to my dad, and he happened to pass away while she was on the phone with him. And she had told me, "Hey, listen, David, like during her cancer journey, she was like, look, David, I'm seeing ones everywhere. Like it's always 11:11 when I look at the clock. It's 111 degrees out. My kids are in homeroom 111." She goes, "It's completely nuts." And I go, all right, well, whatever. She goes, "No, you know what I think?" And I go, "What?" She goes, "I think that's dad. I think that's dad, like telling me everything's going to be okay." And I'm like, all right, whatever, da da da. Good thing you think that. So after she passed, my kids, every homeroom was 111, right? We would be out at Lake Mead in Vegas, boating, and at 111, my daughter would go, "Oh, look, it's 111 degrees out," like all this stuff, right? And we just think it's June, right? And so we have this like anytime we see ones, we think of how sweet it is that maybe that's June looking over us. So I get a call from a reader, a text, a friend of mine, and she goes, "That was pretty cool what you did about June." And I go, "Excuse me?" Because I told the stories of the ones
Yeah.
in the book. And I go, "Oh, you mean the story about the ones? Yeah, pretty cool, right?" She goes, "No, no, no." She goes, "How you did it." And I go, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Where you finished the story?" I go, "What?" She goes, "You don't know what I'm talking about." I go, "What are you talking about?" She goes, the chapter, the page where you finish the story of June's, it ends on page 111. I go, "Are you?" I'm getting chills right now telling you the story because I'm like, how is that even remotely possible?
Yeah, and it is because when you
Well,
become
you have the book. You could flip to page 111. That's where the story of the ones ends. How you can't plan that stuff?
no, and it's true, and there it is. Yeah, it's a very
Unbelievable, right?
well, and I want to talk a little bit about 11:11, and it is true, and it is a sign, and it is a sign. It's a divine sign, and it's a spiritual sign. And gosh, and it was her way of letting you know that she's acknowledging. That was her way of acknowledging. For I think when people become really spiritual, they start to see 11s, and then now I see fours.
Really?
Yeah, now I see 844, 444. It's always 444. Always fours.
Wow.
The 11s, now it's fours. So
Interesting.
it's really interesting. Yeah, numbers have energy and numbers bring messages. And
Hmm.
I work with the angelic realm. And so when I get a message like that, I know that just like you, they're they're like, "Hey, Nance, pay attention." And so what that did for you, and it's wonderful because now you pay attention because you think about her. And that's wonderful.
Yeah, which is really cool. I mean, that's an energy that I
Yeah.
wouldn't have tapped into had she not told me the story of the ones and had I not really thought about it. And there are multiple stories like that are throughout the book. And it just does give me some comfort, and I think it should give the reader some comfort that they're not alone, you
Right,
know,
right.
because cancer can be a very lonely, isolating place, whether you are experiencing it or you're a secondary a person, you're a caregiver, a loved one, just a friend, whatever. It can be a very scary and lonely place. So, one of the things that I love most about the stories is that very few people have told me. I don't think anybody's ever told me they haven't identified with at least a couple of the people in the book,
I was
and
gonna,
that and
yeah.
because I know you're all about connecting people and having them form deeper, more authentic connections. And I think that's what I was trying to do with these stories, was so that I could understand what Nancy went through as a kid, what she went through as a young adult, how she was able to or unable to connect with people in her lives. Because if I can connect with her on an emotional level, maybe I can learn from that. And that might allow me to then better connect with people in my own life. And that's what I tried to do with these stories.
No, and I agree. I think it's a great thing. Let's talk about biking. You go on this 5,000-mile bike ride. Tell the
Yeah.
audience about that. And you call it Cycle of Lives. I mean, where did this idea come from? How come you decided to do this?
Well, I'd like to say that it was a grand master plan. It was a bit of a gimmick. So, what I like to do is I like to press myself with goals that are completely unreachable, and because then if I could reach them, it's like, wow, maybe it's kind of nice to set a goal too high. So when I was doing the book, and I kept thinking over and over about this concept of we're all connected, and I really wanted to believe it, right? We are all connected, but how and why? Connection, connection, connection. Oh, and then I thought, like, in these old timey movies when like a plane goes like from Africa over to Morocco and then Morocco to France, and the red line follows the plane,
Oh yeah.
on the map. So I said, hey, well, why don't I've talked to all these people for a couple of years. Why don't I be the thread that connects them? So
Neat.
why don't I get on my bike and zigzag my way across the country to try to meet as many of them so I can connect the stories? And
Right.
that was what I wanted to try to do, was to connect. And I thought, oh, okay, that'd be kind of fun. And then, yeah, I only had 6 weeks to do it. So if you can do the math, that's like 120 miles a day, every day.
Breathe.
Uh,
No, I'm reading.
Crazy,
I'm reading
completely nuts.
like, okay, my butt hurts and I'm tired and I don't want to do this, but you just kept going.
Yeah, part of it was because I didn't want to fail. Right.
Right.
I didn't want to fail. Part of it was because I had an obligation. I had hospitals to see, cancer centers. I had media stuff. I had people that were expecting that I was going to do this. So I didn't want to let others down. Another thing was, I mean, I needed a space to contemplate the stories.
Right. And you did it for June.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, you guys, the book is A Cycle of Lives. It's by David Richman. This is Nancy Earl. This is High Road to Humanity, and we will be right back. Hi, this is Nancy Earl. This is High Road to Humanity. I'm back here today with David Richman. We're talking about cancer, and we're talking about emotions and what we go through, what the person goes through, what the family goes through, how the caregivers, everybody plays a role in this, but a lot of times we don't show our emotions. And I'm really glad that you put this book together, David. It was a really great idea. Um, in the book, you talk about what really hit me was June's family. She had a husband, she had a couple children, she had a
Hmm.
big family. You spent holidays and everything together, and then after she passed, you kept going on with all of this, and you've been doing it since 2007. But it really bothered you that the family didn't continue on and support your mission to bring awareness to cancer. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. It's not just continue. Like, I don't want to have them be stuck in a place where they're constantly focusing on June's death, but it was weird because, like, I would do an event and I'd include, all whatever 15 of them or however many were in her married into family, and I wouldn't get any responses, and I'm like, I mean, why is that? And it just didn't make any sense to me. And I and even after doing this for a few years, I would go like, hey, like, I'm not suggesting that you take part. I'm not even suggesting that you like make a gesture, but at least I like, are you getting my messages? Like, aren't you glad that at least the memory of her is kept? Not a word from a single one of them. And it really, really was difficult to understand because she was so positive and such an important part of their lives. And I just think that it was so traumatic for them, and it was such a loss that they didn't have the ability. Sometimes pain is healed over time. I think in some cases it just can't be. I mean, I don't know how to say that. Like, I just feel some people aren't evolved enough or equipped or take the time to receive professional help, or can just face the hard time. It's so hard. We can live in such.
Yeah, I know, but as you're speaking, it just feels like it's the opposite of what you taught in this book.
I know,
Well,
it's
right,
really a drag.
right, because and this is I'm an intuitive, so I'm picking up is
Yeah,
they didn't want to deal with the emotions, just like you said. You were a reminder that she died.
yeah,
instead of a celebration that she lived.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I could take it personal, but then I decided not to because,
Right.
everybody, yeah, look, I really am in tune with this concept of, even though we're all connected, I'm got to live my life and everybody lives theirs, right? We're all just passerbyers in each other's lives, and sometimes we're fortunate, like you and I have connected, and we both have this like
Yeah.
mission to connect people, right? So we're passerbyers, but we're connected for a moment. How wonderful is that? So, I guess you're right that's it, and I think I've come to peace with it. I certainly don't like it. I don't wish it was that way, but I definitely have come to peace with it. That, you know what, everybody's living their own life, and
It's an awareness. You're aware.
mhm.
It it makes me, and I would imagine it makes you even more aware that people aren't dealing with their emotions when it comes
Oh,
to stuff. We don't deal with death well in our society. Everybody pretends that we're going to live forever. It's quite interesting. And you know what I mean? It
oh,
is.
I know it, and I also there's two or three physicians in the book, doctors in the book, and surgeons, whatever, and a couple of that didn't make it, and all of them talked about how the human brain is just not wired to be able to understand its own mortality. Like, I can understand other people dying, but I can't understand my own. It's like when you look in the mirror, you see yourself as you see yourself. You don't see yourself as others see you. And they see you as the way you look today. You see you as the way you want to see yourself in the mirror. And it's pretty funny. Like, there's this cartoon of this old dude looking in a mirror, and he sees like this little kid looking back,
Yeah.
and he's like, man, I still look so good, right? But he's this old dude in the mirror, right? Because that's the way we see ourselves. I think that is an explanation for it.
Well, and I just think, okay, and I'll get into my spiritual part of this. I believe the more we connect with a higher power, God, divine, whatever you want to call it, I say God, then we do bring in that energy and we start to realize that, we are energetic souls and we're down here learning and we're down here evolving and this isn't it. Now I'm
Yeah.
going to, so I don't know why I'm going to ask you, but I am. Other than 111 in the book, has she been in contact with you?
No, not that I am aware of.
Around or do anything like any like aha moments or anything like that where you're like,
I think that biggest aha moment was that story ended up on page 111.
okay,
I think that was it. I don't think that there is, but I'll tell you what, where the connection is and where she's spoken to me is, here I am, she died, what, 15 years ago now. And over the years, while this idea was coming to fruition, I stayed close to her and she stayed close to me, and in memory. And during the writing of the project, that whole thing happened, and it was really interesting. Like I'm really grateful to my editor, because when I first wrote the book, the first draft that I sent to her was just me interviewing the people that ended up in the book. My editor sent back a note to me saying, look, this is all wrong. It's never going to work, because you got to pull yourself out of their stories. You're not part of their story, right? They have their own stories. You're not part of their life. This is their story. So pull yourself out of their stories. And then why don't you write it your own story? And I'm like, nobody's really interested. And they go, yeah, they'll be interested to see how you process your sister's death, and, the bike ride and the whole thing. And I was like, okay. So I did that. And that made me really stay close to her, and also contemplate some of the grief. And I think I'm very grateful to the having the time on the bike ride, because although I had grieved her death, which was a really, yeah, it was kind of an easier thing to do, because she died over 4 years. She didn't die like in an accident overnight, right? And so we had a lot of talks. We connected in a lot of ways. We were able to grieve. At least I was able to grieve her death long before she died. But I wasn't able to grieve until I went on the bike ride, because I didn't even know I had an issue. Was I wasn't able to grieve the losing of the one person that knew me as a kid.
who
You
really,
know,
yeah,
and I think that's the interesting thing about sibling death is,
yeah.
nobody else knows you the way you were as a kid than your sibling.
This was healing for you.
Oh, absolutely, especially with regards to that.
Yeah, so between the bike ride and listening to other people's stories, that's what really healed you emotionally, I
On a
suppose,
lot of different issues, even many unrelated to cancer, right?
right?
Even many unrelated to losing my sister. It made me, yeah, it did heal me because I was able to connect with people on a very, very deep level and realize, man, I know I've been through a lot, but wow, have people been through a lot. Like you never know what they've gone through or what they're going through. And it humbles you to the human experience and realizes, you know what, we all should take a moment and practice self-healing, self-awareness, self-care. And that can only make us, stronger and better people for those around us as well.
Yeah, and that's something that I talk a lot about. I'm glad you brought it up. Taking care of yourself, healing yourself. Just like you talked about the elderly gentleman who didn't in Albuquerque who didn't speak to his daughter, and she didn't. And think of all the emotions they held in and what that does energetically, and how that
Oh,
weighs on you. And then once you release it, how we're healthier human beings by doing that. I'm so glad to see society is changing and that people are starting to become more aware of these things.
yeah, I'll tell you what. Who doesn't know the person that's going through something difficult or has gone through something difficult recently that you are avoiding talking to because you don't know what to say and you don't want to upset them and you don't want to put your foot in your mouth, and it creates this angst, right? And it
Mhm.
creates this like tension inside of you, like, oh, I got to call this person, but it's been so long, I don't know what to say, and what are they, right? Okay, now compare that to just doing the hard thing and picking up the phone and calling this person and saying, "Hey Nancy, like literally I've been thinking about you. I know I've been afraid to call you, but I'm not afraid right now. How are you?"
Yeah.
And the relief and the release of tension and the release of that angst that just comes from connecting with someone in a really authentic way, especially on the emotional level, it always makes you feel better. Always. Even if the subject is heavy, even if it's a cry fest, whatever, you are going to go out of that conversation feeling much better about yourself, about humans, and about connecting with others. And it's never, less communication is never better than more. More communication is always better.
I can see how this book has really made a difference in your life. Hey, we're going to go to one more break here before we get
Yep.
out. Okay? You guys, I'm here today with David Richman. How do people find you? You do have a website, david-richman.com. Is that correct?
Yes. Or cycleoflives.org. Same website, david-richman.com or cycleoflives.org.
All right. This is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity. We will be right back. Hi, this is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity. I'm back here today with David Richman. His book is Cycle of Lives. He's told 15 people's stories and 5,000 miles in a journey through the emotional chaos of cancer. And this is what his book looks like. And you've written so many stories in here, and I was asking you on the break what story you'd like to tell. I wrote down a couple that I thought were interesting. One is Terry. She's 42 or was 42, out of Albuquerque, single. And she was a nurse practitioner, or she probably still is. And she had Hodgkin's lymphoma. Just because it hits home, would you mind telling her story for us?
Yeah, sure. And also home. Yeah, New Mexico. We're staying in New Mexico, and meeting her after talking to her as deeply as we spoke for a long time was really emotional. Right? It was really great to meet her for the first time in New Mexico on the bike ride. But her story is really interesting. It was really difficult to write because she was a black sheep of the family. Wanted to go to Georgetown across the country, and her parents were basically like, "Fine, you want to go, you're on your own. That's that." And she really was alone, right on the other side of the country, and didn't have the greatest time in college, but okay time. And she met someone, and they're getting ready to plan their marriage because they got engaged, and all of a sudden, and she's a nurse right at this time, she's in her early 20s, and all of a sudden she starts feeling sick, and she fast forward, she finds out she has Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she's going to need a bone marrow transplant. I mean, it's very bad.
I want to stop because you talk in the book how this woman hit home with me because her parents never came to visit her.
No,
Not one time.
not one time, or invited her back to home to spend the holidays or anything. It was very, very, I identified with that
I do too.
very much
That's
so.
why I brought it up because I was,
Yeah.
oh,
Because look, we all want to feel like, oh, pity me, and oh, I had it so rough or whatever. But that's what I love about these stories is, I mean, I have no idea what it's like to be told you're going to die, but I do know what it's like to be estranged from a family where you're shaking your head going, but I'm a good person. Why the hell don't you come visit me? Why,
yeah,
why the hell don't you
right, right.
ask me to come visit you? I'm additive to the situation, dude. Like, what the hell? Right. So I totally got her on that level. So on the cab ride to the hospital to pre-check in and get the procedures started, her fiance calls her up and says, "Hey, you're on your own. I got another woman pregnant. I can't be there for you. I'm staying here."
Oh,
On the way to the hospital. Yeah.
yeah.
So she makes it through, and she joins a support group of people that had her type of cancer, and everyone from the um, in her support group except for her dies. And so she's lonely pretty much her whole life, or been abandoned her whole life, or realizes she's the only one that's going to live her whole life, and for what? Because she's not very happy. But she puts the pieces together and she goes back along her life, and all of a sudden lymphoma comes back again, and they tell her, look, it's very rare that we could do a second bone marrow transplant, but we'll do it. And all along the way, she was told, you got a 5% chance to live. You got an 8% chance of this. You got a 40% chance, 90%
They
odds,
do that.
right?
They can't even do that though. You know
They
that?
they do. And so she gets ready to be cared for. Now she's got another man in her life. This is many years later, right? And she goes through the bone marrow transplant, and it's his turn to take care of her. And he calls her up and he says, "Yeah, hey Terry, yeah, I'm not strong enough. You're on your own, dude. I can't handle this. Like, I'm not strong like you. I can't come take care of you. I can't watch you die." And she's like, "Yeah, but I could live, right? So maybe you should do that." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm not strong enough." So
Oh,
again, she gets abandoned, right? And it's like, ah, and then fast forward a little while later, she starts freaking out like she's not going to have kids. Everybody around her has died or abandoned her or whatever. And all of a sudden, she gets ready to meet someone, and she starts doing this math in her head, right? Oh, I had a 5% chance to live. Oh, it's 90% chance you're going to die. Oh, well, you got a 30% chance of this. And something clicked in her brain. And I totally get it. She said, screw the odds. Like, let's just 50-50 everything. I'm either going to meet this person and fall in love with him, or I'm not. I'm either going to get cancer again or I'm not. I'm either going to be happy at my job or not. I'm either going to be healthy or not. So everything for her became a 50-50 chance. And I just thought, oh my God, I love that. I love that idea. And I said to her one day, like, how are you able to have such a great view? And she goes, well, listen, man, like, most people like think about this long path and what it all means and all this stuff. She goes, I go to bed every day going, I'm either going to wake up or I'm not.
I love it.
Right. And I'm like, I love that.
She's living
And
it.
she goes, yeah. And she goes, I go about my day and I go, it's either going to be a good day or it's not. Like, I love this new math, this 50-50 of everything. And I found it so admirable. And fast forward to much later now, because, the book's been written and edited, and it's been out for a couple of years now. And she's married, she's happy. And she's not living, the exact life she wanted to live, but boy, is she happy. And she's got such a great attitude. And I love her 50-50 thing. But what I wanted to do, Nancy, was not make her sound pathetic, because, man, just everybody dies around her. Everybody abandons her. Like, she's not good enough. They don't love her, whatever.
She rose.
Eventually,
She rose above.
what?
She rose above it all.
Above it all, but not because of anything external. I love what I love about her story is how the second her outlook changed, it
Right.
was this weight
Right.
off of her.
The
It
internal.
was like, yeah,
Right.
it
Yeah.
was like this, stop telling me odds about everything and freaking me out.
Right.
Things are either red or black. They're either white or they're black. They're either yes or they're no.
Right.
Screw the odds. It's heads or tails, babe.
Well, that's what I picked up as you were telling the story, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it was just like, people, here's the problem with that. When people tell you these things, it sticks in your mind, and we need to get all that out. I really teach balance on this show. I teach
Mhm.
staying in balance and bringing in that positive energy so that when those things like that come at you, it doesn't impact you so much. Because a lot of times people take these things to heart, but what it did was she changed her outlook on life, you know?
Unbelievably so. And it was wonderful talking to not every one of the people in the book, but many, many, many people of the book. Once they were able to
Yeah.
have a safe space to talk about things that they had never talked about before, once they were able to vocalize that internal voice that, told them one things were a certain way, and they heard it over and over and a totally different way,
Right.
there were some profound changes that took place with people because when you think about something, it's very different than when you say it, and especially when it's about your emotions.
Well, yeah.
And that's why getting professional help is really important, because you get to hear what's inside of you in a different way. At least that's the least you get to do.
Well,
um
I think I'm going to tell you what I think on this one. I do affirmations every single day, and I believe in the power of the spoken word. And I believe that if you get up in the morning and say, I'm going to have a day of heaven on earth, and you do it and you believe it, you
yeah.
will. Because it's really whatever we feel on the inside. I have one more question that's really important that I want to ask you because we've got about 3 minutes left. You talk in the book about gratitude,
Hmm.
how you learned gratitude. So I wanted you to address that because gratitude is huge. The universe responds to our gratitude in an energetic way. So, because when you're grateful, you're rewarded for that gratitude. But you
Hmm.
learned gratitude through this whole process. So I thought maybe you'd want to spend a couple of minutes on it.
I'll tell you. Sometimes it takes like well, sometimes you chip away 1,000 times at a topic and finally you get to the heart of it and you understand. And other times it's like one whack with the right hammer on that topic and it's like boom, like you get it, like lightning bolt. Oh, I got it. I was introduced to one of the stories in the book by somebody that told me, you got to talk to my friend because although she's going through the last stages of cancer, um, when she heard that she had terminal brain cancer, or what she, would most likely be terminal brain cancer, she was completely grateful for the news. And I went, shut up. Like, you can have gratitude, like hearing that. And she goes, oh, no, it's absolutely as authentic as you could imagine. And I was like, whatever. So they weren't in a place to be able to talk to me at that time. But she did pass. And her husband called me up and said, hey, I think I'm ready to tell you the story now, and we can talk. And so he ended up talking to me for a very long time, maybe about a year and a half. And I talked to his wife's mother, his wife's sisters. I really went deep into their story to understand how is it possible that somebody who had a 25-year marriage, 6 kids, survived the death of a child. How in the world could she be told, hey, they found a grapefruit-sized tumor in your brain. You've got emergency 14-hour surgery that you might not make it through. And if you do, you're probably not going to live long after, and have her be grateful for that news. I'm like, well, it's just not even possible. And so, uh, to cut to the chase, why she was grateful for that news is because she had convinced herself that she was losing her mind because she was changing into a different person. And she had become so angry and so bitter and so not herself that she asked her husband to check her into a mental institution and take her away from him and take her away from her family because she was becoming a horrible person.
Yeah.
When she was checked into the mental institution, they did a battery of tests on her and found a grapefruit sized tumor in her brain, called up her husband and said, get down here right now. And when he leaned in and said, they're wheeling you in for surgery, here's what's going on, she's like, thank God it's cancer, right? Because she thought it was her. So that was one of those stories. It was like a lightning bolt of, don't, like, you think you understand gratitude, you don't, because, and I understand gratitude now. Like I couldn't have couldn't have believed that you could be grateful for something like that. So I guess what my point in telling you that story is that almost any situation can be looked at with a positive lens, with a what can I learn? What can I take away? What is this going to provide me, or whatever, right? And that's a very good reflection point for me, is if that woman could have felt gratitude at that moment, I better look at everything that comes into my life and
Great.
go, there's some amount of gratefulness for it, right? There's some amount of positivity to it.
David, thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. I totally enjoyed it. We got to talk again for sure.
Yeah, thanks for telling all these stories. You guys got to pick up the book. It's Cycle of Lives. It's by David Richman. Okay, you guys. David, so happy that you came on. You got another book in you?
Oh, I got plenty. I have another one that I wrote before that's really cool. I think you'd get something out of that one too. It's called
Oh.
Winning in the Middle of the Pack.
Well, maybe we'll have you back on the high road.
Yeah, it's a really good book. And I got more fiction books, more nonfiction books. Hopefully our paths will cross again and you'll go, oh my God, look at that. That's cool.
I love it. All right, you guys. This is Nancy Earl. This is High Road to Humanity. Everybody have a terrific week, and God bless. Please join me next time on the High Road with stories full of love and hope for our future. You can find High Road to Humanity on TogiNet Radio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and now watch the High Road on Binge TV networks. My channel is High Road to Humanity. Have a blessed week, and know by staying on the High Road, you will make it to your destination. For a psychic empath reading, visit my website, nancyyearout.com, to book your date and time with me. I will deliver your messages from the angels, and God bless.